It's day 2 of Festival of Media in Rome. It's lovely to be here with Sam Phillips and Shelley Zalis. You guys just come off stage talking about diversity, although we're a pretty all-girl panel, so, maybe it's a little bit from that angle. I missed the beginning of the session, I have to admit. What did I miss? What were you guys talking about?
So I opened the session by talking about my interest in the whole area of inclusion and diversity and where that has come from a corporate point of view, because greater inclusion and diversity is now absolutely provably better for business, but also from a people point of view, because actually we need to think about getting the right people, the right makeup of people, not just the people who we have the affinity bias towards in a room. And my point of origin on all of that is A, corporate, but B, personally. For example, I have a disabled child, so I was hopefully engaging the room with the fact that this is a really important area for everyone to think about from all perspectives. And then I opened up and introduced my fantastic panel, one of whom was Shelley sitting here.
And I think what we really talked about was that we have to stop admiring the problems and activating solutions for change. And it is a next step change. And I just loved how you opened as well. We are a minority, but when we're all together, you feel and act like a majority. And I think a lot of it is supporting one another and amplifying each other's voices and making sure that we bring not the future is female, but the future is feminine. Bring our feminine perspectives to the workplace. I think we're missing that. We've got a lot of masculine perspective, now we need the feminine side as well.
And I think that we did talk a lot about gender and the gender agenda and the importance of that. But we also talked about a lot of other areas of what I call the inclusion wheel as well.
Age as well, which is
age. We talked about disability. We mentioned socio-economic situations where we need to get people who aren't like middle class, like us, into the workplace. We talked about the whole range.
Yes, no, it's very interesting. And like you say as well, though, I think that it's an interesting perspective, not just in work, but in general life, that sometimes women feel that they have to almost attack other women and not support each other. And I think that as a wider thing, women are starting to respect that perhaps pulling each other down isn't the way to go, and you've got to be supportive of each other, which is, important.
I think that's why I started the Girls Lounge. We have 17,000 corporate women now connecting and supporting one another and being girlfriends. And I think that's really what it's all about. We often are told that competition breeds success, and I say collaboration, breeds success. And Madeleine Albright always says, women that don't support other women deserve a place in hell. I turn it and say, women that support other women deserve a place in heaven. And I think that's really what it's all about, is supporting one another, helping all of us. When you help a woman rise, we all shine. And I think that's what's really important to remember.
But at the same time, affinity bias, which is a term that my boss went, oh, that's great, we've not heard that one before. Obviously, I guess we all have that in common, so I guess we might be prone to biasing towards, girls.
Yeah, potentially anyone can, because you are prone to go towards what you like, what fits you, what feels the most comfortable. And actually, one of the biggest things about this whole inclusion discussion is actually almost making yourself a bit uncomfortable and making sure that is okay. And I say, until we can look out the window and see real Britain reflected in our front of house workforce, then we shouldn't be satisfied. And I think, if you looked around your offices, if you listened around your offices, I live and work in London. According to Stonewall, 10% of our workforce should be LGBT+. I don't see and feel those numbers, for example.
No.
So we've got a lot of work to do.
But have you ever watched the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you have 3 choices. 50-50, so you're right 50% of the time. Phone a friend. If they're a topic expert, you have a good chance, maybe, if they're knowledgeable in that question, getting it right. And then ask the audience. Ask the audience is a diverse group of gender, race, age, mindset, and I think that it is right 94% of the time.
Oh, really?
And so when we talk about diversity is good for business, it's not just a nice to have. It is a business imperative. When you put a disparate group of thinkers together, your business will flourish.
Yeah, and we must always guard against groupthink. And in a world where we want more points of view, we want different ideas, different points of view, we need to break through for our clients. Why are we not tapping into this far more diverse population than we are traditionally tapping into?
I did think it was interesting as well that you were talking about how people are doing these surveys to find their unconscious bias now, because, I'd love to find out what my unconscious bias is, and I think it's something that's really useful, for people to be aware of what they might not realise about themselves, because that's where you start, right?
We all have bias.
Yeah.
No matter what, we all have bias. And I think it's just what Sam said, it's being conscious of your unconscious. It's not changing your mindset, because you're not going to be able to necessarily. That might take a lot of therapy, but it is about looking in the mirror and saying, I'm going to go in and hire the best talent, regardless of race, religion, gender, etc.
And there are some areas where we have to have a very big, bold, brave conversation. So 43% of Britons have never had a conversation with a disabled person. Never had a conversation with a disabled person. That's a scope figure. If you've never had a conversation, how fearful are you? And we have to face these. How fearful are you going to be about maybe engaging in that conversation, let alone employing that person, let alone adapting your workplace to suit that person? And yet the sorts of brains that you can get in, which range from anything from dyslexic, dyscalculic, who come at things in a different way, to Aspergic potentially. People who actually we need in our workforce. We need these brilliant data people. So why are we not actively going out there and
hidden
looking?
Disabilities are an issue because it's not so easy to tell. And some people feel embarrassed to perhaps admit it on a form that they've been diagnosed as having one of these hidden disabilities. I mean, I think part of the battle is
I think
maybe
also it translates into loyalty. I say hire for passion, train for skill. You hire a disabled person, you're going to have them loyal for the rest of their lives. You look at millennials, 3-year span, they're out of here, and they're looking for their next gig. And I think that there's also, we have to look at all the variables of what a great employee is, and think about that when we make, our hiring decisions.
And it's also thinking about what you actually want and need more, and thinking about it in a different way. So we have trialled employing an adult with Down syndrome. Now, clearly, an adult with Down syndrome is not going to be able to do the same sort of work in terms of output as a graduate. But what can they do? It's looking at what people can do, not what they can't do. So there is a process called job carving, for example, where you carve off the bottom bit, the repetitive bit, usually, of someone's job. And actually, that is the sort of work that someone with Down syndrome, for example, absolutely loves. Same job every day, opening the same envelopes, etc., etc. What a great thing to do, to be able to give someone who otherwise wouldn't be able to get a job the self-esteem that we all get from going to work, to get that for themselves. Fantastic. Let's do more of it.
It's terribly demotivating if you do keep trying, particularly, I imagine, for somebody with a pre-existing condition. So this time last year, I was in Rome, there was a diversity panel, people are talking about stuff. How do you feel the conversation has shifted since this time last year? And, what's the next step?
Well, I'm going to answer that question by giving you a piece of feedback that I was just given by Jan Gooding, who is the Chief Inclusion Officer at Aviva. And she sat on a panel last year, and in fact she's sitting on a panel later. And she just came up to me and she says, Sam, I cannot believe how much the conversation has matured in the last year. I think that the fact that we're not just talking on the surface of some of these questions and issues now, but we are going deeper, that is rich reward, and for the Festival of Media as well, in terms of understanding the advancements.
I think the biggest change is measurement for accountability. That you can't treasure what you can't measure. And I think we're starting to really create accountability for change, from accountability in people's bonuses to doing the right thing, to accountability in media, like I talked about the GEM scores that we're creating, to what NBC, to what Channel 4 is really starting to do, really create metrics that we can all move towards. And we will see the cream rise to the top, and then the others that are resisting, there'll be FOMO factor, because they're gonna feel like they're definitely missing out on, moving ahead. And unfortunately, that might be what it takes to move them, and one day they're going to look back and say, wow, I'm proud of myself, look how far I've come.
Yeah, and we see some agencies, we certainly are at Omnicom Media Group, really advancing the agenda. But the other thing I've noticed is that clients are starting to have this conversation a lot more. And when clients start saying, hang on, what are your numbers? Why am I not seeing any white woman in this, any women in this room? Why am I only seeing white people in this room? Then we've got to really set up a notice. And when that goes into RFIs, you've got to do something about it.
But also as a media industry, it's important to be projecting that image to people, a diverse image, because that influences other people.
How can we reflect real Britain if we don't understand real Britain?
Exactly. Well, thank you ever so much for chatting, guys, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you.
You're awesome. So are you, Sam.
Likewise, Shelley.